Gateway to the World, C1 Students' Book, by Amanda French and Andrea Langton with David Spencer. Unit 1. Reading. Position vacant. Dream job.
For some people, working in a remote location would be an ordeal, but for others it sounds ideal. Catherine Purvis speaks to 4 people to discover how their dream job worked out.
A. Karen Aspen, on-board cook, Scotland and the Caribbean.
The first time Karen Aspen set foot on a boat, she ended up on an 8-month adventure sailing around the Caribbean. As a temp for a catering company, she was sent to work as the on-board cook for a group on a weekend sailing trip around Scotland's west coast. But then she decided to stay with the yacht, helping out with a 2-month renovation before joining its next voyage across the Atlantic. I just said I could do that, as you do when you're 19, laughs Aspen. Once in Antigua, she cooked for wealthy tourists who chartered the yacht before it was hired by the filmmaker Gregory Colbert to track whales for his film Ashes and Snow. I was one of those girls who had dolphins on her pencil case, says Aspen. She never thought she'd see a whale or dolphin in real life, let alone learn to listen out for them on a hydrophone, or have a job where you could walk up on deck and there'd be a whale 10 feet from you. It was a real turning point for me, says Aspen. I was meeting all these people who were following their passions and doing what they really wanted with their lives. It's something I would aspire to do, to live life on my own terms.
B. Jada Yoon, New York Times, 52 Places Traveller.
When the New York Times announced it wanted to send a journalist to every location on its annual list of the top 52 places to go, the posting went viral. Memes were generated and 13,000 people applied. Who wouldn't want the chance to visit places like Croatia, Mexico and Chile? Jada Yuan was chosen as the lucky writer and soon embarked on a tour covering 38 countries over 6 continents. Yuan knew she was going to be busy pumping out Instagram updates about her exploits, photographs and a print column each week. But then she learned last minute that she'd also be organising the transport and accommodation herself. It wasn't until 2 days before I left that I realised that would mostly be on me, she says. Despite missing trains in India, running out of money in Sao Tome, and battling an ever-growing list of articles to file, Yuan found ways to overcome any travel rage and enjoy the small wins. Even if you were in a place where you weren't having the greatest time, you could always take a pause to watch the sunset, she says. I have flashbacks all the time. I'll just be doing something, and it reminds me of a fruit I ate somewhere, or a time I was driving in the rain. I can't even pinpoint what triggers them, but I'm grateful for them. None of them are bad.
C. Craig Stanford, archaeologist of St Kilda, Scotland.
There wasn't really an average day on St Kilda. It's a pretty wild place, says Craig Stanford, who worked as resident archaeologist on the isolated archipelago. The islands of St Kilda are home to seabirds, sheep and the St Kilda field mouse, but most human residents left in 1930. The post is a semi-legendary job in Scottish archaeology, says Stanford, who spent 6 months conserving, promoting and protecting the archipelago's cultural heritage, including 1,260 unique stone huts that were once used by farmers. A helicopter will try to deliver food twice a week, provided wind conditions are favourable. But in a place where every hour of your day is defined by nature, this is no easy feat. You end up eating some weird things from the back of the cupboard, Stanford confesses. And with poor satellite internet connection, a major obstacle to communicating with the outside world, the tiny St Kildan community must make their own fun. Whether it's a burger night, film night, or gathering to celebrate a birthday, the social life on the island can be brilliant, says Stanford. I made some extremely good friends I imagine I'll have for the rest of my life.
D. Murray Hughes, Warden of Ynys Enlli, Wales.
It was somewhat by chance that Mary Hughes and Emyr Glyn Owen became the new wardens of Ynys Enlli, a remote island off the Welsh coast, famous for its wildlife and sites of archaeological interest. The couple met on the island as day trip visitors on a perfect summer afternoon 2 years ago. So when they spotted the vacancy to run the place, we shared one of those looks between us, the looks that speak louder than words. We had to go for it, says Hughes. Many people assume that people who want to live on an island are escaping from something, but for us, it was more about realising a dream. The pair quit their jobs and have been working hard ever since they arrived last September. As the island is now largely uninhabited, they have to be self-sufficient. We are responsible for the upkeep of 10 listed buildings, says Hughes. There's always a wall to paint or a ceiling to plaster. She adds, I've had to get my head around things I've never had to consider before, like how the water system works, and the language of volts and amps and solar panels. Hughes has also dug drains and mixed cement, and has been building fences at weekends too. But no matter how tough the work, the pair can always end their day with a walk through the fields and a swim in the sea at sunset. There aren't many aspects of mainland life that we miss, says Hughes.
Unit 1. Listening. Exercise 3. Part 1.
Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast, Learning Matters. I'm Sam Polaris, and in this episode, Zara and I are talking about grit, the much discussed ingredient in personal success, and how it impacts our learning.
Hi, I'm Zara Redman. Great to be here. I'd like to invite all our listeners to leave a comment, and we'll try to respond to as many as we can during the show. So, Sam, let's begin by answering the question, what exactly is grit?
I'm glad you asked. It's a term that's been around for a while, and often it's assumed that people understand it. In her TED Talk entitled Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance, Angela Lee Duckworth describes grit as passion and perseverance for very long-term goals.
So, does that mean being committed to something you have a passion for and sticking at it?
Yes, that's right. A person with grit is far stronger mentally than most people. They have stamina and determination. They don't give up easily, despite distractions or knockbacks. And they have the ability to work hard towards their goals, not just for short periods, but for an extended time.
Interesting stuff. A lot of comments are coming in. People are asking why grit is important.
Well, education is, without doubt, the most important point in relation to grit. Angela Lee Duckworth's research has shown that academic success isn't dependent on education or even IQ, but instead on grit. Her studies have shown that it's a key determiner in how successful someone will be in both their academic career and in life. So it's important for students to be made aware that if they want to achieve their goals, they need to develop grit. One of the ways to do this is by developing what is called a growth mindset. By that, I mean they have to understand that the ability to learn is not fixed and that they have to invest time and effort in their learning. It's believed that people who are significantly more passionate about their goals and who have more perseverance and self-control In other words, more grit will be high achievers, no matter what their background is. To me, it's about when you have a goal that is more important than anything else in your life, by a long way, and grit sums up all the qualities you need to achieve that goal, no matter what.
That's a fantastic way of describing it.
Unit 1. Listening. Exercise 4. Part 2.
So, earlier on, you quoted Angela Lee Duckworth. What can you tell us about her?
Well, she's the scientist behind the buzzword grit. She works as a professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and for more than a decade, she has been conducting research into the relationship between grit and achievement. Angela has a unique perspective because her background is in psychology and education. She used to teach maths to 7th graders at public school in New York. While she was teaching, she observed that doing well academically wasn't nearly as simple as she had once thought. It wasn't just a question of having a reasonable IQ or being talented. She realised that the most successful students shared a common quality. This is what she describes as grit. She is well known for her book and TED Talk on the subject. She's talked about her research with teachers who work in some of the toughest schools, and she's emphasised the importance of helping students develop grit and other non-cognitive skills which are critical for a successful career.
Yes, her TED Talk is really interesting. I can recommend it. I was really intrigued by the grit scale she refers to in her book. Can you tell us something about that, Sam?
Well, it consists of a number of questions designed to make you reflect on how passionate and persevering you are. And if you want to find out more about what grit means, the clearest way to really understand is to go to the website and answer the questions.
Critics of grit say that it omits the obstacles society puts in the way of some people.
Yes, people seem to think that what Angela is saying is that all you need to do is work harder and you'll achieve more. However, critics point out that some people work a great deal harder than others, but still find it difficult to achieve their goals.
Other critics have commented that people will persevere when something is worth investing in, so they lay the blame with educators for not providing an inspiring curriculum.
Well, I think there's some truth in that.
Do you? I'm not quite as convinced as you are by it. I don't think it's the educators that are at fault. It's natural for students to put a lot more effort into the subjects that they enjoy, and it can't be easy to design a curriculum that appeals to everyone.
Well, one thing's for sure, it's by far the grittiest subject we've discussed on this show.
Let's choose another question to answer.
Unit 1. Developing speaking. Exercises 2 and 3. 1.
Well, I'm still a student, so in fact I tend to eat in places where the food is relatively, affordable. For example, a pizza, sushi, or burger place. It's quite different to the food we have at home. My parents usually cook traditional meals where I'm from. To be honest, I prefer that. I guess I'm simply more used to it. They say that there's nothing better than home cooking. Anyway, I mustn't forget to answer the question. Many, but not all, restaurants are chain restaurants and usually serve a particular type of food. The food may be a bit less healthy than home-cooked food, and it's often food from a different culture.
2.
Yes, I was very much influenced by a teacher when I was growing up. I should begin by explaining that, as a child, I was really good at gymnasium, or rather gymnastics, and belonged to a regional club where I trained 6 days a week. As you can imagine, it was a big part of my life. As I was saying, I was good at gymnastics, and my teacher, whose name was Micah, influenced me a lot. She taught me how to be disciplined and focus on achieving long-term goals. I admired her and wanted to be like her when I was older. I've never thought about it before, but I think I achieved that.
3.
As we're now in the final year of school, a lot of people are asking me about my plans for next year. Basically, I'm usually quite good at making plans, such as what to do in my free time, where to go, where to eat. However, making long-term plans is a little different, and I find that significantly more difficult, probably because I haven't got much experience of it. I think sometimes it's difficult to carry plans through to the end. Also, some plans are so much more important than others. Yes, I think that's the main reason. The awareness that some plans are life-changing makes it difficult.
Unit 1. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Synonyms. Challenges and achievements.
Battle, struggle. Exploit, adventure. Feat, accomplishment. Obstacle, hurdle. Ordeal, trial.
Unit 1. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Word formation prefixes.
Anticlimax, antisocial. Cooperate, disadvantaged. Disagree, disapproving. Discouraged, illegal. Impractical, incredible. Inexperienced, invaluable. Interactive, interpersonal. Irrelevant. Misbehave, mislead. Overpaid, oversleep. Reconsider, rediscover. Subconscious, sub-zero. Supersonic, superstore. Unable, unavailable. Uncomfortable, undeniably. Unreliable, unthinkable. Underestimate, underrated.
Unit 2. Reading. 10 years of trends. Fashions come and go, but which ones do we want to forget forever?
Last week, just as the tiny and overpriced sunglasses I'd ordered finally turned up with the courier, I discovered they were no longer fashionable. I guess that's the way it's always worked. One minute an accessory will make you look super cool, and the next minute it'll make you look like a relic from a bygone era. I try to make smart purchases. I do plenty of online research whenever I have money to spend, and I visit lots of shops to get the best price and quality. But fashion moves too quickly. However, the good news is that fashions will often repeat themselves. When my parents were teens, they'd wear dungarees and flowers in their hair. In my grandmother's day, it used to be leopard print that showed you were fashion forward, and then, a few years ago, leopard print, denim dungarees and floral hairpieces all made a comeback. No doubt we'll see those tiny sunglasses I regretted buying back on the catwalk sometime soon. Of course, there are some things that we can only hope are well and truly consigned to the past decade. In my opinion, sandals are ugly enough, but combined with white socks? Once, many people might have thought that if you made a fashion faux pas like this, you would have to ensure that no photographic proof remained. However, while to many the word ugly sounds rude, fashion has recently reclaimed the socks and sandals look as a hyper-trend. Cheap and humble sneakers and shoes tell the world that you can be yourself and comfort is more important than looking pretty. Ugly is suddenly chic. As for personal grooming, the online chatter about hair, beards and moustaches was endless. The grey-silver look for young women came and went, as did shaving one side of the head. Think Miley Cyrus, Rihanna and Selena Gomez. It was men's hair, though, that was the most polarising. Full beard, stubble, goatee, man bun and beard combo. Styles would come and go and be ridiculed and admired in equal measure. I should know, my fashion-conscious older brother was constantly spending money at the barber and coming back with a new look. I never knew what to expect when he walked through the door. The last 10 years also saw people encouraging each other to do weirder and weirder things. The Ice Bucket Challenge kicked it all off, with friends inviting each other to dump ice over their own heads. While this particular challenge was intended to raise money for charity, its popularity prompted other people to come up with their own challenges, most of which were not exactly designed to put an end to world hunger or inequality. Another trend was the extreme selfie. People standing on cliff edges, tiptoeing towards large carnivores, dangling off bridges, falling into zoo enclosures. It seems that many amateur photographers will keep putting themselves in physical jeopardy in pursuit of the perfect picture. We've also seen the explosion of beautifying filters on social media recently, offering users an instant makeover. While these hugely popular filters may seem like a fun way to try out a glamorous look, studies show that for many people using them can end up damaging their self-esteem, as they measure their real face against unrealistic and false beauty standards. I can't help but hope that soon people will stop putting themselves at risk just for the likes and move on to something altogether healthier for mind, body and soul. Talking of moving on, isn't it time to admit that most movie franchises are well past their expiry date? My friends and I used to go to the cinema together to see the latest action movie on the big screen. But there isn't that same excitement anymore. Essentially, we've been revisiting those super spies, dinosaurs, lightsabers and killer cyborgs forever. Even the most avid fans are realising they're paying for the same old story with slightly different special effects. And while time seems to have moved slowly in the world of action films, dance-wise, there were some pretty interesting and short-lived moves. Gangnam Style, for instance, and of course, who could forget the floss? After a dancer named the Backpack Kid demonstrated the move in 2017, flossing soon went viral, even ending up as a victory dance on Fortnite. All these dancers suddenly found themselves in the spotlight and being sought out for interviews, for a brief time at least. Meanwhile, organising suddenly became cool, with influencers like Marie Kondo gaining millions of social media followers by showing how to be organised. And you'd hear people talking about how cool it was to fold their jeans in a special way and criticising others for being disorganised. You're always losing your house keys. Set a pattern for them. She would have a messy room, wouldn't she? She never tidies up. Experts have given a variety of reasons to explain this phenomenon, noting that millennials and Gen Zs seem to have bought into it more than any other age group. The consensus is that they're increasingly turning to structure at a time when the world around them can cause concern and anxiety. Although it's not something I find particularly cool, I can sympathise with people looking for a way to cope. Personally, all I need is a plate of avocado toast. But Maybe that's no longer fashionable either.
Unit 2. Listening. Exercise 3.
Hi, I'm George Smith. Welcome to the Influencer Podcast, the programme that explores the stories behind some of the biggest influences in art and design. Today, we'll be discussing the artist Andy Warhol, who changed the art world by embracing celebrity and consumerism and became a symbol of the counterculture movement. We'll discuss why he was more than just an artist and why his work is still in vogue today. Our studio guest is Jade Nelson, an art historian and exhibition curator. The gallery where Jade currently works is in the heart of New York. Welcome, Jade. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, George. It's good to be here.
So, Jade, what do you think makes Warhol so popular?
Well, it depends what you mean by popular. When we say popular, do we actually mean famous? Warhol's art is certainly that. His bright, colourful pop art paintings are instantly recognisable. But there's more to it. Warhol himself became an iconic figure, as famous as his paintings. It's impossible to separate Warhol's work from Warhol the man. They are one and the same.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, Warhol was an innovator, a complete game changer. He was what we might refer to today as an influencer, even a disruptor. Warhol was fascinated by the idea of fame and celebrity, and he attracted media attention with his iconic silver wig and his taste in eccentric fashions. He used to hang out with rock and film stars, as well as politicians and society figures, which meant he was always in the public eye. Rather like Picasso, he wasn't just famous for his art, but for his whole persona, his looks, his personality, his friends. He was very recognizable. He became a brand.
So he became famous because he rubbed shoulders with the rich and famous?
That certainly helped, but his work is undoubtedly what makes him one of the most important and influential artists of his time. But the way Warhol packaged and marketed himself inspired icons such as David Bowie, who greatly admired his work, and wrote the songs Oh You Pretty Things, Kooks, Changes, and Andy Warhol about him. In fact, it was Warhol who inspired Bowie to create his own character, Ziggy Stardust.
Wow, I didn't know that. Would you say that Andy Warhol was ahead of his time?
Pretty much so. Way before selfies and reality TV, Warhol documented his personal life like an Instagrammer. He was always taking photos with his Polaroid camera and recording himself on a tape recorder. He didn't used to bother keeping up with fashion because he was the trendsetter. He bucked the trend at formal events, making it cool to dress down by wearing blue jeans with expensive shoes, jacket, and shirt and tie. And he liked to cause a stir and get noticed.
Oh, so he really liked appearing in magazines and newspapers. He sounds like some of today's celebrities.
Well, Warhol was a celebrity, and a talented one at that. He started his own magazine, Interview, and created an innovative interview style by making them more casual and chatty, and barely editing them at all. In my opinion, the magazine was like no other, as he got celebrities to interview other celebrities, so they'd reveal more to each other than they would have done to a journalist.
What about his art? Why do you think it has stood the test of time?
Andy Warhol was one of the leading figures in pop art, a movement that uses popular culture in art. Warhol brought a new approach to this movement with his series of iconic images of ordinary objects, including Coca-Cola bottles and Campbell's soup tins. He pushed the boundaries so that almost anything could be considered art. One famous piece is a set of boxes. He made the ordinary extraordinary, and in doing so inspired a number of current artists, including Damien Hirst and Cindy Sherman.
He was an artist whose work was truly innovative, wasn't he? So, can you tell me a little more about his fascination with celebrities?
It was a lifelong obsession, really. Warhol was a shy child who was captivated by movie stars and the silver screen. He used to go to the movies with his brothers and collect signed photos by writing to film stars. As an adult, he promoted celebrities known as Warhol superstars and inspired the expression 15 minutes of fame. The rock band that he managed and produced for a short time went on to be very successful. You may have heard of them, the Velvet Underground. In his art, he's probably most famous for the Marilyn Monroe portraits. You see that image reproduced a lot, but he painted many other celebrities throughout his life, including John Lennon, Mick Jagger, and Debbie Harry of Blondie. In fact, his work maps a timeline of important people and events. Ironically, his fame lasted much longer than 15 minutes, and his legacy lives on in history, pop culture, and the art world.
That's fascinating. So, tell me about the exhibition of his that you're currently working on.
Unit 2. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3A and B.
Is it better to choose clothes in classic styles rather than going with passing fads?
Yes, well, I think buying classic clothes is a more socially responsible choice than trying to keep up with the latest trends. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. But don't you think it's a bit boring?
What do you mean?
Well, not everyone wants to dress like their mum and dad. I'm not a trendsetter, but classic clothes can be really dull. It's fun to try out new styles.
Perhaps to some extent. But don't you agree that we should all be buying clothes that are going to last for a long time? Choosing timeless classics is much more sustainable than buying disposable fast fashion.
Yes, I would go along with the idea that we need to buy less, but we all need clothes, and I think most young people would rather buy clothes that are on trend rather than classic styles. I mean, just the phrase, classic styles, makes me think of all those scratchy, stiff, uncomfortable fabrics that people used to wear. Ugh!
The problem is that trends move so fast. What's all the rage now will be out of fashion by next year. What's wrong with classic styles? They're classic for a reason. Practical, warm, well-made clothes that people will be able to wear for years. Good quality clothes are always in vogue.
But clothes are so much more than just things to keep yourself warm. They are a way of expressing yourself and how you want the world to see you. Do you want to say, I'm classic, or I'm innovative, creative, and fun?
Yes, but I think the best designs often take classic styles and add a twist. This is only anecdotal, but I heard from a friend of my sister, who works in the fashion industry, that classic clothes are actually making a comeback right now. There's such a backlash against fast fashion that people are starting to embrace classic styles.
I see what you mean. Maybe dressing in classic clothes is a way of making a fashion statement. But perhaps we will have to agree to disagree.
Do you think marketing influences what people buy?
Oh, definitely. Advertising and marketing has a huge influence on people's behaviour. It's impossible to ignore it.
There's evidence to show that influencers also massively affect people's shopping habits. Can we consider influencers as a type of marketing?
Do you mean vloggers and celebrities?
Yes. Celebrity endorsements of a product can generate sales worth millions. That's why they get paid so much for advertising campaigns.
Yes, I think it's true that vloggers and influencers who have a high profile on social media are also increasingly important to brands.
I don't think I choose my clothes based on what I see on social media, though.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that. We are all influenced by people we admire. In fact, quite a lot of research has been done to back this up. It's often subconscious, so we don't realise the reason why we go for certain brands.
Unit 2. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Trends.
Backlash. Catch on. Cultural phenomenon. Fad. Hashtag. Iconic. In the know. Make a comeback. Must have. Outdated.
Unit 2. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Expressions related to fashions and trends.
All the rage. A passing trend. Buck the trend. Go to. Back in fashion. In vogue. Keep up with the latest fashions. Make a fashion statement. On the radar. On trend. Raise your profile. Start a new trend. The next big thing. Trendsetter.
Unit 2. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Formal and informal language.
Adversely. Badly. Cease. Stop. Dispose of. Get rid of. Ensure. Make sure. Excessive. Too many. Too much. Garments. Clothes. Increasingly. More and more. Initiative. Idea. Manufacture. Make. Penalize. Punish. Proposal. Suggestion. Purchase. Buy. Require. Need. Revolutionize. Make big changes in. Make big changes to.
Unit 3. Reading. Bringing history back to life. Rose Robson explores how 21st century technology can help us step back in time.
When I was at school, studying history was knowing about things like the exact date of the fall of the Berlin Wall, or being able to recite all 6 of Henry VIII's wives. During one test, I suddenly drew a blank. Which 3 astronauts first stepped onto the moon? Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and, the passive memorization of names, dates and facts, and the focus on invasions, revolutions, and the lives of kings and queens, made history a subject that felt irrelevant and remote, and as dead as the people of the past. But, in many classrooms today, the focus has shifted. Now students are expected to think more critically about traditional versions of historical events, and to consider their wider social and cultural implications, helping them to recognise that there have always been many stories, as opposed to one. Moreover, new technology and media have allowed us to gain fresh insights into history, bringing the past to life in really dynamic ways. Time Team was a popular TV programme that was helping to propel archaeology into the public consciousness. The specialists in the team spoke about each excavation with genuine passion and translated the science in a way that meant audiences felt engaged rather than alienated. An ancient iron nail, a tiny piece of pottery, a mud-encrusted gold brooch. At the beginning of each episode, the presenter Tony Robinson would ask who had owned the item and how it had ended up in that location. People wanted to know, and at its peak, the show was so popular that the ratings grew to 3.5 million viewers who wanted answers. Although Time Team no longer airs, its legacy remains. A new generation of archaeologists is digging up muddy fields, piecing mosaic fragments together, examining old bones and holding up their finds to the camera. Cutting-edge technology is helping us uncover even more of the past secrets. Colorado State University archaeologist Christopher Fisher and his team had been digging in Mexico at the site of an ancient and massive city hidden under jungle vegetation, when Fisher had a revelation. As he was walking around the site, which was 26 square kilometres and had as many buildings as Manhattan, it dawned on him that the excavation would take him the rest of his career, and he thought, there's got to be a better way. There was. Fisher and his team used LiDAR, a high-tech laser mapping technique, to reveal in breathtaking detail the 1,000-year-old city. Typically used on drones and military helicopters, LiDAR was also used by Australian archaeologists to discover and map vast medieval cities long buried in the forests of Cambodia. As well as lasers, archaeologists are using GPR, ground-penetrating radar, to enable them to see what's underground. Just north of Rome, archaeologists from the University of Cambridge used GPR to uncover an entire Roman city with no digging. The images showed incredible 3D shapes of public baths, theatres, shops and other structures. Although the use of equipment like LiDAR and GPR has caused an archaeology revolution, it doesn't mean that traditional, boots-on-the-ground, Indiana Jones-style excavation has become redundant, but it has certainly sped up the process. Other innovations also help to bring the past to us. Virtual reality, VR technology, is used by museums and heritage sites to allow visitors to go back in time and experience important historical events firsthand. You can walk around ancient Rome or get an up-close look at a Viking battle in all its 360-degree 3D glory. Computer-generated imagery, CGI, is another way of taking our understanding of history a step further by bringing cities, buildings, and even people back to life. The quality of the visualizations that CGI technology produces with realistic animation and 3D images helps make history more relatable, particularly to younger people. If innovations in technology are helping to make the past more exciting, they are also providing solutions to help conserve it for the future. The Roman baths in the city of Bath in the UK are an example. Glass walkways have been cleverly suspended above the Roman foundations so that no human foot will cause erosion. Lighting is deliberately softened, reflecting the moody atmosphere of a Roman sanctuary, and avoiding deterioration to artefacts that artificial brightness would cause. Before I visited last year, friends had advised me to expect snaking queues and rooms packed with slow-moving bodies. It was a description that turned out to be accurate. But the soundscapes and CGI reconstructions brought to life a Roman world beyond my expectations. I emerged in awe of this interactive journey. Many people believe that a good imagination is all that is needed to open a window into the past. But I suspect that the more we embrace the technology of the future, the closer
we will become to our past.
Unit 3. Listening. Exercise 2. 1.
I've watched all the seasons of The Crown several times. You see, I'm a huge fan of historical dramas. Recently, I found out that The Crown wasn't filmed in Buckingham Palace, but at Lancaster House, a historic building in London. Although Queen Elizabeth married Prince Philip in London's Westminster Abbey, that scene was actually filmed in a cathedral in the small city of Ely. Regardless of where the series was filmed, the places looked amazing, and so different to where I live. Anyway, I ended up booking a trip to the UK next year that takes in some key locations used in The Crown and other series. I can't wait.
2.
I'm a costume designer from Korea, and I work mainly on Korean and Chinese TV period dramas. I really admire costume designer Anna Robbins. She's won awards for her work on Downton Abbey. In the film version of the series, Queen Mary visits Downton, and the designer wanted the Queen's jewellery to look authentic. Anna said she wanted viewers to feel like they'd seen Queen Elizabeth II wearing the same piece of jewellery. In contrast, she also talked about compromising on some of the outfits. The film is set in 1927, when the fashion was for shorter skirts and dresses. However, Anna decided that it wasn't appropriate for the aristocratic characters of Downton to show their knees, so the dresses were made longer. I think that's an important lesson for me to practice in the future, when to be authentic and when it's okay to bend the rules.
3.
I'm doing an A-level in English literature, and to help bring some of the historical plays we study to life, we're encouraged to watch them being performed. It's expensive to go to the theatre, but we're fortunate that the National Theatre in London films National Theatre Live productions to show at cinemas around the world. In 2020, National Theatre at Home streamed a free production online each week. That was amazing. I watched all of them. After that, I was hooked. I didn't realise how much I love theatre. I'm even going to do a playwriting course next year.
4.
That's about it for today's podcast. Next time, we'll be speaking to a psychologist and looking into everyday activities that are good for mental health. For example, researchers in the US say there are positive benefits from watching historical dramas. We'll be looking at the work of Dr. Pamela B. Rutledge, director of the Media Psychology Research Center in California, who has described period dramas as life simulations which show us different ways to be through themes universal to the human condition. The idea is that watching historical dramas allows us to escape from our day-to-day problems, helps us to improve social connections, and even develops better listening skills, all of which lead to positive mental health. Well, I will certainly be following Dr. Rutledge's advice and settling down for a weekend binge of historical drama.
5.
I'm a software engineer from France, and I work from home for companies from all over the world. Recently, I've been working on computer-generated imagery, or CGI, for films. Only after working in this area do you realise how heavily the film industry relies on CGI. I love watching out for other films that use CGI to see what else is being done. I was really impressed by Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, which relies heavily on computer technology. Because the series is set in 1927, CGI was used to recreate the streets of Paris, London and New York from that era, using a combination of filming in real UK locations as well as on film sets. My favourite part of the film is the mythical creatures themselves, though. So much so that I'm going to read more fantasy novels.
Unit 3. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
OK. Well, these photos have something in common. They all show inventors with their inventions. I'd like to talk about the photos of the printing press and the light bulb. The image of the printing press shows 2 men and a boy. I think one of the men is probably the inventor, Gutenberg. They're standing near the printing press. The other image shows a man standing next to a very large light bulb. He could be the inventor, Thomas Edison. There are several points of similarity between these images. For example, in both images, the inventors are dressed elegantly. However, Edison's clothes are quite different from the others. Both inventions were impactful. The printing press gave more access to news, information and education, while the light bulb turned night into day. The printing press led to the typewriter, whereas the light bulb changed the way we live and work. I think both inventions were just as important as the other.
Thank you. And now, Tobias, which invention do you think you couldn't live without and why?
That's tricky. I think I'm going to have to say the printing press, not only because I love reading, but also because of how it facilitated education. Could you imagine how difficult it would be if everything had to be written by hand? It would mean that most people, apart from the very wealthy, would remain illiterate and uneducated. So the divide between the rich and the poor wouldn't have changed. It also helped the advancement of science, as data could be copied accurately, so scientists could trust the information they received.
Thank you.
Unit 3. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Words that are similar in meaning.
Genuine. Authentic. Gullible. Naive. Skeptical. Cynical. Trustworthy. Reliable.
Unit 3. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Phrasal verbs. Separable and inseparable.
Transitive separable. Carry out. Cover up. Make up. See off. Transitive inseparable. Call for. Count on. Go over. Stick at. Take up. Intransitive. Add up. Come about. Go around. Set out. 3-part. Get away with. Get on with. Make off with. Put up with. Read up on.
Unit 4. Reading. Mixed reviews. Why are dystopian novels so popular? 4 commentators discuss the role and value of dystopian fiction. A.
The dystopian novel is nothing new. But I doubt that George Orwell, Ray Bradbury or Suzanne Collins imagined that their respective works, 1984, Fahrenheit 451 and The Hunger Games, would still be so popular years after they were first published. Even more remarkable is how this genre has suddenly come to crowd the young adult shelves of local bookshops, and I suspect that this will be the case for many years to come. This is because, unlike the older dystopian classics, in much of the new fiction, teenage protagonists drive the narrative. Furthermore, although the concepts of friendship, broken trust, and defying authority feature in other types of novel, at the heart of any dystopian story is an uprising against the status quo. This is of particular interest to teens, since they are at an age when they are becoming increasingly cynical about society. Several years ago, I remember overhearing a couple who had clashed with their son over his reading choices, the Hunger Games and Divergent series. How are we going to persuade him to read something more positive? They fretted. I suspect their attitude only served to reinforce his view that adults don't get it.
B.
Film adaptations of modern authors' dystopian novels have given the impression that all it takes to overthrow a totalitarian state are cartoonish superpowers and some smart one-liners. And I imagine that we aren't likely to see a change here. But in the novels themselves, many of the main characters have considerably greater depth, and the narrative is often written from the hero or heroine's perspective, giving the reader access to their inner thoughts and the memories that haunt them. As the plot unfolds, we come to understand why they might choose to collaborate with the enemy, betray a friend, fall in love with the wrong person, or sacrifice their own freedom to facilitate the process of revolution. Then there is the fact that young adults can often see their own lives mirrored in fantasy worlds where everyone is expected to conform, which might explain why dystopian works hold such great fascination for this particular age group. This is not to say that dystopian novels are all doom and gloom. If readers look carefully enough, even in the darkest story, the author has left a candle burning. There is a message that while human civilization may be on the verge of collapsing, humans themselves will survive.
C.
In the past, whenever I was asked to speak at a literary festival, questions from the audience were predictable. They were invariably about the individuals that populated my dystopian novels and whether or not I thought they were role models. But at last year's festival, I knew the questions were going to be different. When I was writing, back in the 90s, I felt I had a moral responsibility towards my young readers. I understood their urge to question rules and social norms, to stand out rather than fit in. Dystopian stories reflect that urge more so than any other kind of novel. At the same time, they offer a glimmer of hope, faint but within reach. A few years ago, however, I felt my responsibility shifting. Rather than writing about dark futures, I wanted to focus on the very real present, and not everyone in the festival audience praised my change in direction. Perhaps it all felt too close, too possible. But I have no doubt that teens will always seek out dystopian fiction, and judging by the standard of writing at this year's festival, we're going to see many first-time authors make a name for themselves. Rather than offer advice, I think I'll leave them to it. After all, everyone's personal view of dystopia is unique.
D.
The New York Times Young Adult Fiction Bestsellers list comes out next month, and we're bound to see at least one novel set in a dystopian future. Since the well-deserved success of the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness and the award-winning Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, a great many first-time authors have been trying their hand at creating increasingly bleak scenarios for the near and distant future. But this trend can only last so long. At some point, young readers will realize they are encountering the same old plot with a slight variation in scenery. Dystopian authors have long assumed that their work resonates with teenagers because of the rebellion factor, But as with all works of young adult fiction, it simply comes down to an exciting storyline. Any book, whether set in the past, present, or future, has to be gripping, and in this respect, Ness and Mandel are experts. They also know how to make us care. Unfortunately, a large number of their contemporaries do not. Presenting people as good guys and bad guys undermines any confidence that they are real. Teens want to read about characters that are complex, like themselves.
Unit 4. Listening. Exercise 2.
I'm George Dale, and this is my weekly podcast, Tech Tomorrow. Today, we're discussing the future of the smartphone. Did you know that there are nearly 4 billion smartphone users in the world? That's nearly half the global population. This figure increases to almost 5 billion if we add users of simple mobile phones, and the number is constantly rising. Today, we have Sandy Jones in the studio to discuss what the future holds for smartphones. Hi, Sandy. Can you start by telling us something about your job?
Hi, George. Thanks for inviting me. I work in the research and development department of a tech company. We work on developing new ideas for technology, such as smartphones. It's my dream job. I love trying out new ideas with the team. You have to be prepared for many knockbacks and failures before you hit on the right thing, though. Many ideas flop, and the successful ones can take a long time to get through to the end user.
So I guess you already know what new things we'll be using next year, then. Are you allowed to tell us about what's round the corner?
I'm not allowed to talk about the latest innovations that we're working on. They won't be available for a while yet. But I can talk about the recent developments that are already in the public domain. There are some pretty exciting and innovative projects out there.
Do you mean ideas that have already been published?
Yes, that's right. For example, they could have appeared as an idea on a website that discusses the future of technology.
OK. It'd be great to see if you think any of the ideas will make it.
Well, all aspects of the phone are eligible for improvement, from the materials we use to how we interact with it. For example, most of us have smashed the screen at some point. Not only is it expensive to replace, it's also inconvenient to be without your phone. A few years ago, the idea of a self-healing glass came about. A Japanese researcher discovered, by accident, that the material he was working on could be repaired with his fingers. The material, known as polyether thioureus, sticks back together within 30 seconds of being held in place, and returns to its original strength within hours. And engineers at Massachusetts Institute of Technology are looking at a polymer that will keep the temperature of a phone cooler and make it less likely to smash, as well as bringing the cost down. And other companies are looking at different changes that may bring further benefits.
What kind of changes do you mean?
Well, flexible phones have been possible for a while, but so far they've not really taken off. However, stretchable phones may be a much more interesting development. As they're very adaptable to different scenarios, people will be able to have a phone and a tablet in one, for example. To make this possible, engineering researchers at Michigan State University have designed a stretchy smart fabric created from organic and nanomaterials, which allow users to stretch the phone and make it the size of a tablet, or indeed, the material could stretch into a large screen.
I like the sound of being able to vary the size according to your needs.
Phones with a holographic display have been talked about for a while too, but the technology isn't really very successful as it stands. Like many products, I think the idea for these will have disappeared in a couple of years' time. However, Samsung is working on their own holographic device, so we'll have to wait and see.
I'm not sure it's something that I really feel I need to carry around with me.
Never say never. I think most people didn't feel they needed to carry a phone around with them at all before mobile phones caught on. More futuristic advances are the type of things you see in science fiction series. However, they may be around sooner than you think. Phones may be implanted into a part of your body to really make them a part of us.
I'm not sure I like the sound of that.
I know what you mean, but at least you'll never lose it again. The next step after implants would be mind control. You call someone just by thinking about it. Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Alter Ego is a form of technological telepathy that allows the user to do just that.
Well, by the time that technology comes out, we will have been carrying these things around with us for long enough, so perhaps I'll embrace an implant. Thanks, Sandy. That's given us some really interesting food for thought.
Unit 4. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
Now, I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Here are some situations in life and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task.
Thanks.
Now, talk to each other about how robots might be useful in these situations.
So, let's see. The first thing that jumps out at me is at the doctor's. Next time I'm ill, I really wouldn't like to see a robot instead of a doctor. What do you think? Do you share my opinion on that?
Not really. I think it is feasible that robots would be useful for seeing patients with minor medical problems.
I don't agree. I'm not sure you can trust a robot to be able to fully examine you. I mean, to take a holistic approach. Some symptoms may be caused by stress or anxiety, and you can't necessarily see that.
Yes, I see what you're saying. That's a good point, but maybe robots could be programmed to ask you questions about your physical and mental health according to the symptoms you're displaying. I'm not sure I'd like a robot to operate on me, though.
Actually, perhaps surgery is one thing hospitals will be using robots for in the future. They can focus better than surgeons and are able to access very small places. Plus, robots don't get tired.
Yes, I guess that's right. OK, let's talk about one of the others. I'm not convinced that robots will be that useful on holiday as a guide or a translator. Most people prefer the company of a human being. I'd prefer to be guided by a local. You get a more personal touch.
I suppose that might be true. Do you think that robots will be useful for any of the other situations?
Well, let's see. We have these options left. In the classroom, as a friend, or at home as a cleaner. Of those, I think the only one that robots will be really useful for is doing the cleaning.
I love that idea. I hate cleaning.
Yes, me too. But I'm of the opinion that in the future, robots will be able to clean the whole house.
Thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide in which situation humans will benefit most from robots taking over that role.
Unit 4. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Support and opposition.
Clash with. Condemn. Conform to. Defy. Facilitate. Obey. Obstruct. Praise. Rebel against. Reinforce. Strengthen. Support. Undermine. Weaken.
Unit 4. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Word formation. Suffixes.
Adjectives. academic, accessible, advantageous, ambitious, believable, breathless, collaborative, commercial, comprehensible, contradictory, discriminatory, economic, effective, environmental, eventful, fearless, harmless, infectious, influential, introductory, invasive, peaceful, productive, questionable, receptive, recognizable, remarkable, scientific, sensible, successful, technological, territorial. Nouns: achievement, anxiety, eagerness, intelligence, likelihood, partnership, procedure, relevance, verbs, classify, familiarize, medicate, sadden, simplify.
Unit 4. Check it. Vocabulary 3. The Internet and online communication.
Browse, cookies, cybercriminal, digital footprint, identity theft, privacy settings, spam, tools, upgrade, virus.
Unit 5. Reading. Are you ready for your close-up? If it weren't for new technologies, online video calls would be impossible. But how do we ensure these go smoothly? A. Minimizing the possibility of technical issues.
Here we go again. The online class should have started 10 minutes ago, but Eva can't find the volume control, Eric reckons his mic isn't working, and Simon keeps losing his connection. Those people who are ready to go from the start are becoming exasperated. If I'd known the class wasn't going to start on time, I'd have stayed in bed, someone mumbles. At the same time, people are talking over one another in an effort to direct the ones having trouble. You need to unmute. Just click on the gallery icon, they huff, well aware that time is moving on. But no one should assume that every attendee has the same level of familiarity with an online app. And all these problems could probably have been avoided if someone had run a session on how to navigate the software. If training isn't possible, hosts and guests can always try out the test feature that many platforms offer. It allows users to try things out before they join a real video call with peers, friends, or colleagues. So if you're intending to take part in a video call with a number of people, this is a feature you might want to recommend.
B. Failing to understand other people's signals.
But even when there are no audio and video quality challenges, the whole experience of communicating via a video call can be unexpectedly demanding, and natural interaction can suffer. For example, video creates a kind of filter, meaning we have to work twice as hard to interpret non-verbal cues and work out the feelings or intentions they convey. Facial expressions, gestures, and tone of voice, all things that assist with face-to-face encounters, are more difficult to access and process online, and we expend a lot of energy searching for these clues. Introverts in particular are often affected, as they are modest in their body language, and others may not pick up on the fact that they are waiting to contribute. Well, if Nadia will sit there in silence, of course no one will notice her, I heard another student say recently. But reserved types like Nadia may well have valid points to make or vital questions to ask, and it's wrong that they are overlooked. We may be connected, but the unfamiliarity of the medium prevents us becoming involved in a natural and relaxed way.
C. Being uncertain what silence might signify.
There is also the fact that when people engage in face-to-face conversations, they often pause, either to give themselves time to think or let someone else have a turn. Online, a pause can feel like a sudden, jarring stop. There's hesitation, as everyone wonders why it's all gone quiet. Someone eventually pipes up with, "So, what's next?" hoping it's the appropriate thing to say. The anxiety and discomfort these pauses cause not only compounds the stresses placed on the attendees, but also creates an atmosphere that can be perceived as less friendly or focused.
D. Becoming stressed by being constantly observed.
Making the online experience even more exhausting is the anxiety caused by being on camera with a group of people scrutinizing you, and the accompanying self-consciousness and discomfort. It's almost inevitable that the social pressure caused by this feeling of being on stage means participants feel compelled to perform. The fact that we can often see our own face in the gallery as we strive to complete this performance just makes things worse. Perhaps if more people realised how universally disliked the gallery feature is, they would not insist on using it.
E. How to make video meetings more productive and enjoyable.
So how do we maximise opportunities for successful communication via a video call? For a start, it's vital that everyone joining a meeting knows what to expect and what is expected of them. For informal chats, a group might agree that they will add a virtual background to add interest and humour in order to alleviate the strangeness of the encounter. For both formal and casual meetings, there is the option to switch off the camera entirely and agree to voice-only conversation. But again, this needs to be decided beforehand. Educational or business meetings must also have a clear agenda. If the purpose of these meetings is vague, people don't know what they're expected to contribute. Furthermore, allocating speaking time to each person will help ensure equal contributions and make the most of each speaker's time. This also avoids having to drop hints when a speaker is droning on and dominating the conversation.
F. Understanding the new codes of behaviour.
Successful video communication also requires familiarity with the protocols. Certainly there are already a number of do's and don'ts emerging. For example, if you're in a work situation, you will be expected to look relatively professional and ensure that there are no distractions in the background. There are similar expectations in educational contexts. Students are expected to have all their class materials ready and not to join meetings in their pyjamas or text their friends. Sitting forward on a chair implies that a person is switched on and paying attention to the speaker, whereas slumping back on the sofa gives the opposite impression. Participants are also strongly advised not to send negative comments via private chat messages. If someone takes a screenshot of the message, it can be shared with the entire group, leaving the original poster in a very awkward position.
Unit 4. Listening. Exercises 2 and 3.
Hello, this is Tilly Green here for this week's Art Trends podcast. We have two art critics with us today, Sophia Perales and Lewis O'Connor. Each has selected an artist who uses the streets as their gallery. We'll be discussing what influences both artists' work. Welcome, Sophia and Lewis.
Hi, Tilly.
Hello.
Sophia, I'd like to start by discussing the artist you've selected, Libby Schotel. Can you begin by telling us a little about her, please?
Of course. I became fascinated with Libby Schotel's art the very first time I came across a piece of her work on the streets of New York. I went home and looked her up straight away. Libby creates images of a paper doll-like character called Phoebe New York. Phoebe's a round-headed, stylish young woman with a dark bob haircut. Libby dresses her in designer clothes and accessories.
She's certainly very stylish. Has she always looked like that, Sophia?
That's a very relevant question, Lewis. You see, like most art, Phoebe New York has evolved over the years. Libby began by drawing Phoebe in profile, so you couldn't see any emotions on her face at all. But once Libby started to draw her full face, she could make her a lot more expressive. Libby told Street Art NYC that this evolution was like watching your child grow.
It's fascinating how Libby talks about Phoebe as if she were a close friend.
Well, in fact, Libby describes Phoebe as her alter ego. I've read that she uses the character to reveal her own flaws, to reflect Libby's own vulnerability and raw emotions.
Yes. I hadn't thought of it like that, but it's fascinating that she uses Phoebe in that way. It's clear that Phoebe New York has got real character and wit. I love some of the slogans that appear alongside the character in some of the work.
Sophia, you said that Phoebe is Libby's alter ego. Do you mean that literally?
Well, yes. Many people say that Phoebe looks like Libby, though Libby denies that was her intention. However, in an interview, Libby explained, Phoebe allows me to express what I can't in real life, and, in a sense, she's become language I rely on to represent myself.
Most artists express themselves through their art. What I find intriguing is that Libby's expressing herself through a figure made of paper and glue.
You're right, Lewis. It's unusual to create art in this way. Sophia, can you talk us through some of the materials Libby uses, please?
Yes, of course, Tilly. I went to one of her solo exhibitions. It was great to see the original collages. To dress and accessorize Phoebe, Libby uses materials such as secondhand and found objects like vintage photos, clothing from flea markets, fashion magazines, record covers, and old books. She likes to choose materials that have had a previous life, that are imperfect, so they may have rips, wrinkles, or marks. I think that gives the work a lot of character. Libby is a perfectionist, and she uses art to try to overcome her own imperfections, to find beauty in flawed things. She cuts and tears everything. Nothing is done on a computer. It's just paper and glue. Libby describes her work as like putting together a puzzle.
It certainly sounds like that.
Then, Libby creates posters of the collage, and at dawn, she goes round the fashion district of Soho, sticking the posters on buildings, street lamps, and scaffolding.
She Instagrams all her work too, I think, doesn't she?
Yes, she does, Tilly. I think she has over 30,000 Instagram followers. Libby says that she doesn't create art for social media, but it influences how she views her work. When discussing Instagram, Libby said that often people will respond by telling me they feel better because of my piece, which is amazing.
Her Instagram page is impressive, but I'm really disappointed that I haven't made it to any of the exhibitions to see the real thing. I love how she's incorporated the fashion element. It's so clever. I think she's worked with some fashion designers, hasn't she?
Yes. The clothing company Lululemon commissioned a life-size Phoebe for their Soho store window. And Libby also collaborated with Victoria Beckham to launch a new lipstick range with posters placed around the city. Libby doesn't dress herself in high-end fashion, but I think she must get satisfaction from being able to dress Phoebe in those clothes.
I think it's her chic style, along with the slogans, that make the work so distinctive.
I agree, Lewis. My favourite is "We Can Make It" because it's so positive. Sophia, who would you say that Libby is influenced by?
Actually, even though there are artists who inspire her, Libby says that Phoebe came out of her head and that she wasn't influenced by anyone.
That's interesting. It sounds more and more like Phoebe is the personification of Libby's personality.
Is she planning more exhibitions? I'd love to go to see her work.
Yes, Libby has more exhibitions in the pipeline, as well as a film about her life as an artist and a book of her collages. Her future is looking really bright. In fact, Downtown Magazine NYC named Libby as one of the top 100 Wonder Women changing the world.
That's all very exciting for her. She seems to be going from strength to strength.
We could talk all day, but we need to move on to talk about the artist that Lewis selected. His work is very different, though there is quite a bit of overlap with the way both artists are expressing themselves through their art. Certainly when I saw...
Unit 5. Developing Speaking. Exercise 2.
So, let's see. We need to think about which of these jobs enable people to express their emotions. They're all jobs in the arts, so I think they all allow this to a certain extent. For example, a dancer. I think they definitely show emotions, as a dance often tells a story, and a dancer can communicate this through the movements and expressions they use.
That's true for some dancers, like classical ballet dancers, for example, but not for all of them. For example, I don't think dancers on a pop video really have to show much emotion.
I suppose not. What about artists? Do you think they show emotion in their work?
It depends. Say an artist paints a still life, like a bowl of fruit or some flowers. I mean, how could a banana or pear show emotion?
But don't you think two people could paint the same bowl of fruit and transmit completely different feelings or create a completely different mood?
Yes, I see what you mean. That's a good point. What about musicians? Do you think they express their emotions?
Definitely. Music represents emotions, and so musicians should show expression in what they play. I think it would be impossible to not express your emotions as a musician.
Yes, I agree. Music needs emotion. What about actors?
Do you think actors are the same as dancers and musicians?
Unit 5. Developing Speaking. Exercise 3.
Now, you have about a minute to decide in which job people are most likely to take on a different persona.
OK, well, I'd probably go for the actor. I mean, they could easily have a quiet or reserved personality, or be quite shy. But when they're acting, they have to get into the character they're playing and, to an extent, take on that persona.
But don't you think that is just acting? They're not actually taking on a different persona, are they? My choice would be the writer. I mean, a writer like a novelist or a playwright, not a journalist, obviously. I think that to write convincing fiction and realistic dialogue, you'd really have to get inside the heads of your characters.
Yes, you've got a point. It's kind of similar to what actors do, isn't it?
Isn't it true, though, that you're not actually taking on a different persona if you're an actor? You're just using your imagination by pretending to be someone different.
Maybe.
OK, so what about a dancer? Do they change their persona?
That's interesting. I think to some extent, yes, they do. To be a good dancer, you have to really get into a role to express emotion. As I said before, dancers need to tell a story and take on a different persona.
I'm not sure. I think dancers don't take on a persona when they dance. Sure, they express themselves through their movements, but they aren't taking on a different character.
We'd better pick one of these options.
I'm going to have to stick with the writer.
OK, let's agree to disagree, shall we? I'm pretty sure it would be a dancer.
OK, thank you.
Unit 5. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Getting meaning across.
Convey. Drone on. Imply. Interpret. Hint. Mumble. Social cue. Vague.
Unit 5. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Expressions with communication and voice.
At the top of your voice. Breakdown in communication. Face-to-face communication. In regular communication. Lower your voice. Means of communication. Raise your voice. Speak with one voice. Tone of voice.
Unit 5. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Expressions with say, speak, and tell.
Say. Be about to say. Hate to say. Have nothing to say. Hear someone say. Safe to say. Say for certain. Speak. Hear someone speak. On speaking terms. Speak on behalf of someone. Speak out against. Speak the truth. Speak your mind. Trust yourself to speak. Tell. Tell someone what you think. Tell the difference. Tell the truth. Told you so.
Unit 6. Reading. The Lure of the Subterranean World.
For thousands of years, humans have had a deep, primal connection with caves. Where once they provided shelter to our ancestors, they are now visited and explored for a variety of reasons. Caves attract those who are keen to discover unmapped terrain. In a cave, you can test your own courage and push your sense of adventure to the limits. For specialists, there are fossils to unearth and primitive paintings to analyse. For the casual visitor, there is amusement and sometimes danger, as indeed the young Thai football team who became trapped in the Tam Luang Nang Non cave in 2018 found out. If the rescuers hadn't risked their own lives to save them, the boys almost certainly wouldn't be alive today. Before that incident, I suspect I took my safety for granted. Now I'll give greater thought to the potential hazards before heading into a cave that's off the beaten track. Earlier this year, I had the chance to visit the popular Ruakuri Cave in the Witomo district of New Zealand. As my group stood admiring the rock formations, the guide ordered us to turn off our headlamps. We obeyed, and instantly we were plunged into darkness. I literally couldn't make out my own hands, let alone my companions standing around me. But then we became aware of a faint glow from the cave ceiling overhead. As we looked up, it seemed as if we were looking at distant stars twinkling in the blackest night sky. It was a truly mesmerising sight, and the longer we looked, the more each tiny pinprick of light grew brighter. Arachnocampa luminosa, the guide explained, more commonly known as the glowworm. Ruakuri is in fact an extensive series of caverns, notable for its incredible limestone formations and subterranean waterfalls. But if it hadn't been for the observation skills of a hunter about 400 years ago, we probably wouldn't know that the cave exists. According to local Maori legend, a hunter stumbled upon the cave while looking for food and reported this to his chief. It wasn't until 1904, however, that the cave was open to tourists. Due to a dispute over ownership, it was then closed to public access from 1986 to 2004, before reopening in 2005 with the addition of a cleverly engineered spiral staircase. This takes visitors to the lowest levels of the cave system, avoiding the main entrance, which is a Maori burial ground and therefore off-limits to any visitors. The tour itself lasts approximately 1.5 hours. Ample time to admire all the intriguing geological features that Ruakuri offers. Should you ever visit New Zealand, make sure it's on your itinerary. Quite a different experience is the Barton Creek Cave in Belize, home to a Mayan ceremonial site. It requires a rather bumpy 4x4 journey over farmland to get to this remote location, but it is well worth the bruises. Visiting a few years ago, we paddled behind our guide's canoe as he led us down an ancient Mayan waterway deep beneath the mountain, our headlamps casting flickering shadows on the passage walls. Some of those passages were a tight squeeze, but once through, we were treated to some stunning otherworldly scenery. Glistening stalactites and stalagmites millions of years old. Photographs rarely do justice to these natural wonders and, to my dismay, my own blurry shots turned out to be no exception. But I'll never forget the experience of climbing up to a ledge and viewing pottery that had been made by Mayan hands thousands of years ago, and the skulls that had been placed there. For cave enthusiasts who wish to stay dry, Cueva de las Manos, Cave of the Hands, in the Pinturas River Valley in Argentina, is also truly memorable. Although similar ochre handprints can be found in other caves around the world, the main panel at Cueva de las Manos contains over 800, making it the largest and most visually impressive display of this kind of prehistoric art anywhere. Various theories have been put forward by archaeologists about what the hands signify. They could have been part of a ritual carried out for religious purposes, for example, but no consensus has been reached. Again, it's a bit of a mission to get there, going by horseback as an option, and it's advisable to leave before dusk begins to fall, unless you want to lose your way in the desert. When I was in my 20s, I was talked into exploring the Fantastic Pit in Georgia in the US. It's not a place that's on the usual tourist trail because the only way to descend to the murky bottom is to abseil down, using a series of ropes. If I wasn't so competitive, I probably wouldn't have agreed to go with my friend and fellow caver, Marcel, but I couldn't let him get one up on me. I knew we had weeks of preparation ahead of us if we were to survive the 178-metre descent. And then the day eventually came when we found ourselves hanging over the top of the pit. It was at this point that Marcel said it was supposed to take a full 8 seconds for a stone to reach the bottom. Had I been feeling more at ease, I might have tested this out. As it was, I was focused purely on the equipment and overcoming my nerves. Were I to visit again, I'd try to be a little braver.
Unit 6. Listening. Exercise 2. Extract 1. You hear two people talking about a book festival.
Hi, Chloe. How did it go at the Edinburgh International Book Festival?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, it went really well, thanks. I was at an event promoting local authors. There was a lot of discussion about the importance of location.
Interesting. But none of your books are set in Scotland, are they?
No, they aren't. Like other authors, I tend to write stories set in places I know really well. I've only actually lived in Scotland for a couple of years. Nearly all of my novels are set in Yorkshire, where I grew up.
I thought so. Do you think it's important that novels are set in places that authors know well?
That was the main part of the discussion, really. We mentioned some well-known writers from the past, such as George Orwell. He lived in Paris and London before writing
Down and Out in Paris and London.
That's right. We also talked about contemporary British authors like Zadie Smith. Apparently she had joked about not being able to set a novel anywhere but Willesden in London, where she'd grown up. In the end, we agreed that it was possible to write about a place you hadn't been to, as long as you'd done enough research. But we all feel much more comfortable setting our novels in places we're familiar with.
Interesting. As a reader, I enjoy reading about places I know, and I think I would be able to tell if the author didn't genuinely know that place.
Good point.
Extract 2. You hear a man telling a friend about a trip.
Did you go away this summer, Neve?
Yes, we had a couple of weeks on the coast. What about you?
I went travelling.
What, again? You're always off somewhere. Where this time?
Southeast Asia. I flew into Bangkok and travelled from there.
Did you do the usual backpacker route?
No, that would have taken too long, as I only had a couple of weeks. I went to stay with some friends I'd made on my travels around South America last year. They live near Singapore, but I decided I'd rather get a flight to Bangkok and travel overland. I hadn't been to that part of Asia before, so I wanted to see as many places as I could en route.
I should have come with you. My cousins live in Krabi in southern Thailand. If only you'd told me. You could have stayed with them for a few days before you carried on.
Oh, thanks. That's really kind of you. Maybe I will next time. Anyway, I was fortunate because I met lots of lovely people on the way. That's what I love about travelling. I really enjoy visiting other countries and staying with people from other cultures. You can learn a lot about life. You get to understand a different way of living.
Yes, that's true. But didn't you mind being on your own?
No, because I was never alone. You see, I'm used to talking to strangers. It's a good way to get to meet interesting people from all walks of life. I usually smile, start up a conversation, or communicate in the best way I can. I wish I'd had longer to travel. I love being on the road like that.
It sounds amazing.
Extract 3. You hear a woman telling her friend about her recent holiday.
So, how was your trip to Seoul with your daughter?
Oh, it was brilliant. The weather was perfect and we did lots of sightseeing and shopping. We both loved it.
Did you take any photos?
Oh, funny you should ask that. Before we left, Jo was reading up on Seoul and became really interested by how the city had developed and boomed in the 20th century. She came up with this great idea for her college photography project that she wanted to do while we were there. She searched online and found some old black and white photos of what the city looked like in the 1920s and decided to take photos of the same areas now to show the incredible changes that have taken place over the century.
What a brilliant idea. That must have been so interesting.
Yes, it wasn't always easy though. There are some really beautiful old buildings that are easily identifiable. They look just the same. It's the backgrounds that have changed dramatically.
You mean because of all the skyscrapers?
Oh, that's right. In the early photos, the city looks quite empty. There aren't many other buildings around. Whereas in the photos she took while we were there, the backdrop shows a cityscape of high-rise buildings.
I guess it would be the same in every city, though, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think you're right. In some cases, we found it really difficult to find the buildings or even the streets in the old photos. You really couldn't identify the place at all anymore. One of the photos Joe had was of an amazing old shop in Myeongdong. It used to be an important commercial area of the city and has grown to be a very large shopping district. The buildings are now so much taller than the ones in the old photos. We couldn't recognise much at all. We asked some of the locals who worked there, and an old man knew the exact location of the shop in our photo and took us there.
That was kind of him. Could you see any similarities at all?
Oh, you can have a look for yourself. Jo should have finished her project soon. I'll send you the link when she's uploaded the photos.
Unit 6. Developing Speaking. Exercises 4 and 5.
One of the most unusual places I've stayed in was when I went walking with my friends in Scotland last year. Most days we walked for about 10 miles, and then when we were tired, hungry, or it was getting dark, we found a place to camp. One night, though, when we were on the Isle of Rum, a small island off the coast of Scotland, we found a bothy to stay in, Gurdill Bothy. It was amazing. Bothies are a basic type of shelter that you can find in parts of Britain, which are almost always located in the middle of nowhere and are often in the mountains or near the sea. Bothies are not only unusual and historic buildings, but they are fairly unique in that they are free to use, and they are left unlocked, so there's no need to book. Gurdill, where we stayed, was originally a shepherd's cottage, but I read that it was renovated in the 1980s to become a bothy. It's very basic. There's a log fire and a sitting and sleeping area. It has its own beach. I have a vivid memory of the stunning views out to sea. There are a few rules you have to follow. The bothy code. Simple things like always make sure you take your rubbish with you and check that the fire is put out and the windows and doors are properly shut before you leave. Mostly people who enjoy the countryside stay there. Walkers, mountaineers and cyclists. People who usually camp and are used to the simple life. What stands out the most for me is the feeling of freedom that bothies give you. In terms of practicalities, they're perfect, as after a long day of walking, you can just turn up and stay for free.
How did you find out about the bothies?
My friend's dad told us about them when he heard we were going hiking in Scotland. If only I'd known about them before. Although I don't mind camping, having somewhere sheltered from the wind and with an indoor fire can make a real difference in extreme weather.
Thank you.
Unit 6. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Collocations. Travel.
Burial ground. Cultural heritage. Geological feature. Native wildlife. Natural wonder. Prehistoric art. Remote location. Scenic route.
Unit 6. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Phrasal verbs. Experiences.
Bargain for. Check out. Get into. Make out. Miss out on. Pick up. Point out. Run into. Run through. Start out. Take on. Turn out.
Unit 6. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Collocations. Describing places.
Affordable prices. Bustling streets. Leisurely stroll. Lively atmosphere. Local delicacy. Vintage clothing. Warm welcome. Worthwhile trip.
Unit 7. Reading. Human nature. What does it take to survive?
Lord of the Flies by William Golding was published in 1954. The novel has sold millions of copies, been translated into over 20 languages, and adapted for stage and screen. A haunting tale about a group of British schoolboys who survive a plane crash and are stranded on a remote island. It has gone on to have an immeasurable impact not just on literature, but on wider culture. It is often used as a parable for the supposedly innate selfishness of human nature. At the beginning of the story, once the boys realise there are no adults to supervise them, they attempt to stick to the law and act with decency. But as time goes on, relationships and behaviour deteriorate. Democracy and kindness give way to greed and brutality. With the exception of Ralph, Simon and Piggy, the older boys start to bully the younger children and steal the little food they have. As leader, the egomaniacal Jack becomes increasingly manipulative and cruel so he can hold on to power. Today, "It was like a scene from Lord of the Flies" is still a comment used to describe wild and unruly behaviour. It is most often applied to scenes of chaos amongst children. However, the dark suspicion that adults might behave the same self-serving way in similar circumstances when order is no longer imposed is one that many of us find hard to shake. That's why any true story of humans facing adversity and still behaving in an inherently good and altruistic way towards each other speaks to our hearts. A highly inspiring story to recently emerge is that of 6 resilient young boys, now men, from Tonga, who went missing in 1965. Like the boys in Lord of the Flies, Tevita David Seola'a, Seoni Fataua, Luke Vaikoso, Fatai Stephen Latu, Kolo Fekitoa, and Sayoni Mano Felipe Totao were marooned on an uninhabited island, but that is where the similarity ends. Rather than treating each other unfairly, they were compassionate. Instead of hoarding food, they distributed it equally. There was no abuse of power, and disputes were settled in an honourable manner. No Tongan would be surprised at this kind of selfless behaviour, as the idea of everyone for themselves clashes with their cultural values. It is customary for young Tongans to be raised with the understanding that they are part of a community and that they should put other people first. But it was a great shock for the boys' families when they were informed their sons were still alive after having been missing for 15 long months. In fact, by the time the boys were found and brought home, funerals had already been held for them. Since then, their story has been shared many times in Tonga, but now their epic experience is being brought to the attention of the world in a new book, Humankind, by Rutger Bregman. Bored with the routine and terrible food at their strict boarding school, the boys apparently decided to sneak off, take a fishing vessel, and see whether they could sail all the way to Fiji. Unfortunately, they soon ran into trouble when the mast was snapped in high winds and the rudder broke off. This meant they were now at the mercy of the currents and ended up drifting for 8 days. Eventually, they sighted an island, but they had a tough decision to make: stay on the damaged boat or abandon it and try to swim across the reef. Even though it was night time, they decided to swim, and eventually all crawled ashore. Desperately thirsty and malnourished, they had no alternative but to hunt and eat seabirds and fish. Regaining a little strength from these meagre rations, they used their bare hands to dig out a shelter in the sea cliff. After resting here for 3 months and desperate to find other resources, they managed to climb up to the island's volcanic crater. To their relief, they came upon taro and banana plants, as well as a population of feral chickens. Still, this discovery hardly meant there were no further challenges to face. During the summer, it barely rained, meaning the boys had little to drink. They managed to make a raft, only to see it smashed up on the reef. Then one of the boys, Fatai, fell off a cliff and broke his leg. Showing incredible resourcefulness and skill, the boys from Tonga were able to perfectly reset the bone with sticks and leaves. This wasn't their only remarkable achievement. They managed to set up a basic food garden in the poor soil and carve out tree trunks so that they could store the little rainwater that fell in the hollows. They kept their fire burning and stuck to a duty roster. Kolo even created a crude guitar from driftwood, a coconut, and wires salvaged from their wrecked boat. He would play this every evening, and the other boys would sing to keep their spirits up. In the end, friendship, teamwork, and faith kept the boys from falling into despair and ensured their survival on the island. It is a story that will be remembered for many years to come.
Unit 7. Listening. Exercise 3. 1.
Apparently, the people who upload the most selfies are between 18 and 35 years old. I'm 18, and I must admit, I upload my fair share of them. Most of the selfies I do are with my new puppy, Pip. He's so cute. I've set up an Instagram site for Pip, and we've got nearly 100 followers. I know, compared to some people, that's not a lot, but I've only had him a few weeks. I've decided I'll take photos every day of Pip for his first year, as I think it's a great way of recording how he develops. It's lots of fun taking and posting the photos, and it brings lots of pleasure for others, which makes me happy too.
2.
I'm a beauty blogger, so I take selfies professionally. When I started, I used to only share highly edited selfies to show myself in the best light. Then, as I gained experience and became more self-confident, I switched to doing #NoFilter selfies. These photos are as natural as they can be. By that, I mean that they're unedited, so the audience can identify more with them, and I really feel I develop a better relationship with them. The place where I take most selfies is near my bedroom window using natural light. If my customers know my pictures are real and natural, they are more likely to trust the information I give them about cosmetics, which is really important for my work.
3.
In our early teens, I learnt quickly about getting the right light, how best to position myself, and then how to edit out imperfections in my selfies. My friends asked me for help, then friends of friends. The reason I kept helping people was that I enjoyed giving them advice. Now I write blogs advising people how to take a good selfie. It was my best friend who first had the idea, as more and more people were asking for help. Now, as well as getting gratification from posting selfies of myself, I feel satisfied by helping others to take good selfies.
4.
I really wish that selfies didn't exist. I think they waste people's time and can be very damaging. Luckily, I've never got into them, as I think it can be a bit superficial. The thing that most annoys me is that some people spend hours every day taking and posting selfies. What a waste of time! I think they must be addicted to it. Experts say it does cause addiction, as it's mood-changing and people can get fed up with seeing your image, which can be damaging, especially for celebrities who depend on the exposure for their popularity. As you can see, I feel extremely annoyed about the whole selfie thing.
5.
Today is the 21st of June and it's National Selfie Day. An excuse, if you need one, to take as many selfies as you care to and post them with the hashtag National Selfie Day. I feel quite indifferent about posting selfies, so I only take them on special occasions, such as birthday parties, holidays, or going out. A lot of people think of the selfie as a relatively new phenomenon, but I read that the first selfie was taken in 1839. What is new is the term selfie, which appeared for the first time in the Oxford English Dictionary in 2013.
Unit 7. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2, 3 and 4.
In the first picture, there's a large crowd of people, and they're all celebrating and they look really happy. I think they're probably outdoors at a football match. I've never been in that kind of situation myself, but I imagine that they're celebrating a goal. I think, from looking at their faces, this is a special moment. We can't say for sure what's going on, but it could be the case that this is the cup final and they've just scored the winning goal. If that's true, then moments like these don't happen that often. My dad is a massive Manchester City fan, and he does get very excited when they win the league. The other picture shows 3 people. We can see 2 of them clearly, and they're both holding a brown envelope and a piece of paper. It looks like they're in a school building, and I think they've just opened their exam results. They look really happy, so they must have got the results they wanted. The other person could be a friend or a teacher, but we can't see them very well. That's the sort of scenario that you sometimes see on the news or in publicity for schools. Most of us know from experience the kind of things they're probably feeling. I know I did feel really anxious on results day. Almost everyone will find themselves in this kind of situation at one time or another. But most people do only take school-leaving exams once, so this moment could be a once-in-a-lifetime event.
Unit 7. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Personality and behaviour.
Compassionate, conscientious, distant, manipulative, principled, resilient, selfless, self-serving, spiteful, unruly.
Unit 7. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Expressions with self.
Compound nouns. Self-deprecation, self-doubt, self-esteem, self-expression, self-indulgence, self-preservation. Phrases. Be a shadow of your former self. Be full of yourself. Be wrapped up in yourself. Find yourself. Keep yourself to yourself. Look yourself. Lose yourself in something. Make yourself at home.
Unit 7. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Describing data. Synonyms.
Accurately. Precisely. Difference. Distinction. Evaluate. Assess. Record. Observe. Significant. Important. Slightly. A little. Stand out from. Be noticeable among.
Unit 8. Reading. 2040 Review. Hope for the future?
When you ask someone to think about the impact of global warming, there's a high chance that melting ice will come up in the conversation. Last week, my friends and I watched a program on TV about this very topic. The program reported how a new study has claimed that polar bears will be wiped out by the end of the century. A clip showed these beautiful animals struggling to find food, and the presenter, moved to tears, asked a scientist to explain why polar bears were in such trouble and asked her what people could do to help. It was a difficult watch, and one of my friends asked if she could turn the TV off. But whilst it is natural that we would want to shield ourselves from the dire state of the environment, it is imperative we face up to the situation if we are to make any headway in addressing the problem. Warnings about the effects of climate change are becoming harder to ignore. According to media reports, the situation is bleak. It is now believed that the polar ice caps are melting 6 times faster than in the 1990s. At a recent environmental conference, international scientists once again insisted that governments take urgent steps to address this potential catastrophe. However, although many companies have promised to reduce emissions and many people want to do what they can, the truth is that many people feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem and are left wondering what possible difference their actions can make. For writer-director Damon Gameau, this feeling of paralysis was the catalyst for a new film, 2040, in which he encourages us to question this mindset. Gameau claims that the film is an exercise in fact-based dreaming, and that his intention is to present a vision of a different future, one in which people live in greater harmony with nature. For those who are daunted by this seemingly ambiguous language, don't be put off. In the film, Gameau focuses on the solutions to environmental problems and inventions and initiatives in renewable energy, zero-emission transport, and regenerative agriculture that already exist, but which have not yet been exploited to their full potential. At the beginning of the movie, he introduces us to his 4-year-old daughter, Velvet, and explains that concern for her future in a rapidly deteriorating environment is the motive behind his research. In a projection of the year 2040, a now adult Velvet glares accusingly into the camera. "What were you guys thinking?" she demands, incredulous that the older generation could ever have accepted trade practices that were so detrimental to the environment. Later, we see Gameau sitting on a plane that he describes as spewing out carbon. In one review I read, the critic accused Gamo of being a hypocrite for travelling this way and criticised him for not using alternative means of transport. Gamo himself admits to hypocrisy, but reminds us that he has no choice since our entire system is built on fossil fuels. In this, he is acknowledging that change cannot happen overnight. During the course of the film, Gamo visits a village in Bangladesh where, for many years, the inhabitants relied on kerosene as their primary energy source. But the installation of solar panels and solar boxes has meant that these villagers can now share power through a microgrid. That this has brought about great transformation in their lives is obvious. Gamo takes us on a walk around the village at night, where lights powered by the grid mean that people can now gather safely and watch sport on television for the first time. Moreover, the sharing of power has enabled the village to become self-sufficient and not dependent on electricity suppliers. Gamo also visits a research centre in Massachusetts, where scientists are looking at how underwater seaweed forests could be used to absorb carbon, as well as being a potential food source and biofuel. He also stops by in Los Angeles and presents some thought-provoking ideas about how the motorways that are constantly jammed might one day be given over as space for trees and other vegetation. Gamo points out the foolishness of personal car ownership and envisions a day when people will summon a driverless car only when they need one. Whether he is specifically referring to the US, it's hard to tell, but 2040 seems rather premature as a cut-off point for American drivers to give up their vehicles. As with his earlier work, That Sugar film, Gamo makes extensive use of computer graphics and humour in conveying his message. Vox pops from children not only express the desire for more trees, but also chocolate rain. Such moments of light-heartedness are welcome and make a refreshing change from the doom and gloom documentaries that dominate the internet. For me, Gamo's film presents an alternative view of the future that gives us hope instead of filling us with fear. If you are someone who is concerned about the future of the planet and wants to learn more about what we can all do, then I recommend you see this encouraging and positive film.
Unit 8. Listening. Exercise 3.
Hello everyone, my name's Amelia Da Costa, and last year, in my third year of university, I was lucky enough to do a work placement as part of my International Business and Marketing degree. I had an amazing year, which I'll never forget. For the first 6 months, I stayed in the UK and worked at an international development agency, helping them to develop innovative, research-led fundraising projects. After that, I spent 2 months in Nepal, working in Kathmandu in a management consultancy. Both placements were at small, relatively new international organisations, but they were extremely different from one another, so I learned a lot about the world of work and life in general. During my placement in the UK, I was mainly based in an office where I shadowed several workers, including Stacey O'Sullivan, a highly experienced development worker. I helped her out with some really interesting research in relation to fundraising, which examined people's opinion of non-profit organisations. I was really surprised to discover that some people were critical of how charities spend the donations. It's obvious when you think about it that most people want the money they give to be spent directly on projects, rather than on the running costs of the organisation. This is why many of the larger international charities reach out to the public by telling them what their donation will pay for, For example, £7 will pay for preventative medicine to protect a child from malaria for a year, or £5 will provide a mosquito net. However, I learnt that it's vital for charities to invest money in research or future growth, as well as doing work in the field. It's been a hard time for charities recently. According to the CAF Charity Landscape Report in 2019, the number one challenge is generating income, followed by meeting the demand for their services. It's amazing to think that the research we did will help the organisation decide how to grow the business, while keeping public opinion on their side to increase donations. It's a great feeling to think that I actually made a difference. My placement in Nepal was really fascinating. It was the first time I'd travelled outside Europe, and I loved experiencing such a different culture. I was based in the city of Kathmandu, which is in a valley in the centre of the country, surrounded by mountains. It's absolutely beautiful. For the first few days, I felt a bit breathless from the altitude, about 1,400 metres above sea level, but after I got used to it, I started to really enjoy exploring the city. Over 1 million people live in Kathmandu, and it's really busy, with bustling streets and lots of cars and motorbikes. While I was there, I lived in a modern apartment with 2 other interns. It was pretty noisy, as we lived on a street with a lot of cafes and restaurants, but we really got to experience city life. We were very lucky because, as part of the placement, our food was provided by a local Nepalese family who lived round the corner. They were so friendly, and I was also lucky to be invited into their home a couple of times for dinner. My placement in the marketing consultancy was extremely valuable because the work was very varied. I was given the chance to work in all areas of business, from finance to marketing and working directly with clients. My work supervisor, Deepak, helped me settle in when I arrived and supported me at work. Everyone in the office was so friendly and gave me a warm welcome. Most of them had MBAs and spoke brilliant English, so it was easy to get on with them. In fact, I can't say enough good things about my colleagues there. They were so hospitable. Living and working in such a vibrant and friendly place meant that I gained an insight into issues that I wouldn't have as a tourist, and I really developed a love for the people and the country. It's an experience that will stay with me forever.
Unit 8. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3, 4 and 5.
These 2 photos both show young men working in caring professions. That being said, there are differences between them. The first photograph shows a young man helping an older man, possibly in his home, whereas the second photo shows a young man working with young children in a classroom. To my mind, working with young children must be busier and noisier than working with older people, but I expect it's lots of fun. In this picture, it looks like the man is a nurse. He's wearing a smart blue uniform and he's holding some sort of medical equipment. I think the older man may have broken his leg or hip, as there are some crutches in the foreground. The nurse might be carrying out a checkup to see if the man's getting better physically, but he may also be checking his well-being too. The scenario in the other picture is quite different. While the man in the first photo is wearing a uniform, this man is wearing normal, smart casual clothes. He doesn't have any equipment. It looks like he's reading to a group of young children. It seems to me that he's their teacher. You get the impression that both young men have chosen this kind of work, as they look as if they enjoy caring for other people. They have cheerful expressions and look content. To my mind, I imagine they find their jobs rewarding because they feel useful. I imagine they might have chosen this kind of work as they want to give something back to society.
Unit 8. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Positive action.
Beneficial. Campaign. Empower. Enable. Enterprise. Incentive. Initiative. Measure. Motive. Profitable. Protest. Step.
Unit 8. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Expressions with give and take.
Give a chance. Give and take. Give someone a hand. Give someone a chance. Give someone the chance. Give someone your word. Give someone the benefit of the doubt. Give something the benefit of the doubt. Give something a miss. Give something back to society. Take effect. Take in. Take it upon yourself. Take on board. Take something to heart. Take the easy way out. Take the initiative. Take the time. Take two.
Unit 8. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Charity.
Altruistic. Charity. Contribute. Donation. Fundraising. Philanthropic. Raise money. Sponsored.
Unit 9. Reading. Television through time.
When the first programmes began airing in the 1930s, broadcasters couldn't possibly have foreseen just how enormous the impact of television would be. In the early 20th century, radio was the medium through which people could hear about current affairs and connect to the wider community. So when the first television sets were made commercially available in the late 1930s, they were largely regarded as technical novelties, as radios with pictures. And even though a crowd might gather in front of a department store window to see one, their curiosity would seldom translate into sales. The low demand was only partly explained by the high price. With only relatively small budgets to draw on, television networks were unable to lure experienced writers away from radio, the stage, or the film industry. Television programs therefore consisted of educational lectures, religious sermons, or classical music. It was only when networks began broadcasting sport at weekends that sales improved, with the head of the household suddenly acknowledging that a set might be essential after all. Since then, interest in watching live sport has never waned. Indeed, the last FIFA World Cup may well be the most watched sports event ever, with over 3.5 billion viewers. In the early 1950s, the percentage of television-owning households in the West was still relatively low, at around 40%. Family members would often decide that they might as well watch what the rest of the family was watching, even if they weren't particularly interested. Variety shows, for example, consisting of comedy sketches, singers, magicians, and other entertainers, were aimed at the widest possible audience. But one of the first types of program to air regularly was the sitcom. The formula was fairly standard. Each episode featured a recurring cast, there would be comedic and dramatic moments, and by the time the credits rolled, any issue would be neatly resolved. Over time, viewers became emotionally invested in the characters' lives and felt compelled to watch every weekly episode. In homes across the world, gathering around the set to watch and comment on a favourite sitcom became a ritual. The next morning, classmates and colleagues would go over the details together. It became apparent that the influence of television was just as, if not more, powerful than that of parents, schools, and governments. Of course, the big networks were still telling screenwriters they couldn't introduce any storylines that were too controversial, for fear of offending conservative viewers. It was in 1960 that the first ever televised presidential debate was seen in the US between Vice President Richard Nixon and a relatively unknown politician called John F. Kennedy. Prior to the debate, approval ratings indicated that Nixon was ahead and might easily have won the election. But as viewers tuned in, they were charmed by the good looks and winning smile of his challenger. In contrast, Nixon appeared unhealthy and awkward in front of the camera. As a turning point in political campaigning, it cannot be underestimated. Although radio listeners believed that Nixon was the more articulate speaker, Kennedy was voted in as president. Since then, ambitious politicians have hired strategists and consultants not so much to help them develop policy, but the image they should project. Yet another shift was evident in the 1970s, this time away from light entertainment and towards programming that embraced controversy and the issues of the day. The US broadcaster CBS's long-running series MASH, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, centred on the personal relationships, stress and trauma experienced by a team of doctors and support staff. Despite moments of comic relief, the series did not shy away from the realities of war. Then there was the miniseries Roots, a narrative that opened many people's eyes to the truth about America's 200-year participation in the transatlantic slave trade. Both series enthralled audiences and became important landmarks in American mass culture. The video revolution came in the 1970s too, giving rise to the phrase, "Can I have the remote, please?" For the first time, people were able to record programs on video recorders and didn't have to fret about being home at a specific time. Television also became increasingly international. In 1985, 1.9 billion viewers are said to have seen a live broadcast of Live Aid, a benefit concert held simultaneously in London and Philadelphia. And during the 1990s, the annual Eurovision Song Contest is estimated to have attracted up to 600 million viewers. Not only were viewers gaining more control, but there was also the sense that they were part of a global community. Towards the end of the 1990s, more TV shows started to become serialized, with multi-season stories. But there was still a 7-day wait to see what would happen next. Now, streaming has transformed the way we watch television. Should they wish, viewers can watch an entire series, over a 24-hour period, for example. Although some might view this as the TV equivalent of viewing a landscape from the window of a high-speed train. You get the general impression, but the subtleties and meaningful moments are simply a blur. And when networks decide to drop an entire season at once, it means that thousands can binge-watch simultaneously. Of course, not all new shows are top quality, but the best do what they've always done: generate discussion. And instead of this being limited to the living room, the schoolyard, and workplace, viewers can despair about a plotline, identify with a tragic character, or predict the outcome of a whodunit mystery via social media platforms. TV may have changed in format, but it seems it will always be a major presence in our lives. We can only guess at how it might develop in the future.
Unit 9. Listening. Exercise 3. 1. You hear two friends talking about their favourite music videos.
You're not watching Old Town Road again, are you?
What's wrong with that? It's so cool! I've watched it over 100 times already.
Really? I
don't know why people like that video so much. The song was #1 for weeks. There are loads of viral videos with that song on TikTok. And not just by young people either.
Yeah, I know. My mum really loves it. The time-travelling element of the video is the best. It really reflects the way Lil Nas X is mixing country and rap music.
Old Town Road isn't really a country track though, is it? It was even taken off the country music list in the US. They said it wasn't country enough.
There was a huge backlash. But if you listen to the chorus, it's clearly country, and there's banjo music. The video features cowboys. How much more country than that can you get? Did you know that some of the cowboy footage is taken from gaming videos? I can see I'm not convincing you. What music videos are you watching at the moment, Lola? I know you like Beyoncé.
Are you kidding? I don't like her. I love her. Her recent visual album is incredible. The cinematography is stunning.
What's your favourite track?
Definitely Already. The choreography is perfect, and the scenery and costumes are just so beautiful. It's more like performance art than a music video.
Didn't she work with some famous musicians on that album?
Yes, the Ghanaian singer Shatta Wale and the Jamaican-American trio Major Lazer. She also dances with the Nigerian dancer Stephen Papi Ojo. He's amazing and taught Beyoncé the dance moves. He's worked with Rihanna too. I loved it. Beyoncé's videos are always on another level.
2. You hear a woman telling her teenage son about music videos in the past.
Jackson, can you give me a hand with the washing up, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll just finish watching this, Mum.
It won't take long, Jackson. Can't you pause it?
Oh, go on then.
You should be grateful, you know. That's something I couldn't do when I was your age. I loved watching music videos, but you had to catch them when they were shown on TV. You couldn't pause when you liked or carry music videos around in your pocket.
I didn't know you liked watching music videos.
Well, we couldn't stream them on YouTube whenever we wanted to then. There was a TV programme called Top of the Pops that I used to watch every Thursday evening in the late 80s. They showed music videos, but bands also used to sing in front of a live audience. And I also watched music videos on MTV.
Do you remember the first music video you ever watched?
The one that really stands out in my memory is the one for Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. I think it was the first promotional music video I'd seen. Apparently, Queen made it to avoid having to lip-sync on TV. Of course, the Beatles had already made films with music in the 60s, but I hadn't seen them at the time.
What year was Bohemian Rhapsody released?
I think it must have been in the mid-70s, but I can't have seen it then. I was too young. My parents loved Queen, and I think I first saw the video on a programme interviewing Freddie Mercury around the time MTV launched in 1981. The Bohemian Rhapsody video was credited as practically inventing the music video.
Let's see. Wow! It looks like it's also the song that's been streamed the most. Over 1.6 billion times.
3. You hear two friends talking about one of Taylor Swift's videos.
When we get to my place, I want to show you what I spotted on Taylor Swift's music video, The Man.
OK, what have you spotted?
Well, Swift directed this video herself, and it criticises the male-dominated world we live in, and it has loads of hidden messages.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you mean Swift's disguise, I've heard about that already on social media.
No, that isn't what I meant. I was talking about hidden references to how society glorifies the worst aspects of typical male behaviour. For example, there's a reference to the film The Wolf of Wall Street, which features Taylor Swift as the man, being praised by the whole office, mimicking a scene in which Leonardo DiCaprio is praised. One of the women in the office is drinking out of a mug that says, "I'd be the man." Later on, there's a scene where the man is reading the newspaper on the subway, and all the articles we can see in the paper are about successful men, apart from the style section, which mentions women. I think this reflects how the media usually comment on what women wear and not their achievements.
Wow, I hadn't noticed those details.
Unit 9. Developing Speaking. Exercises 2, 3 and 4.
Do you think it is fair that top actors are paid so much?
So, what do you think, Anna?
That's quite a tricky question. Well, a lot of the most famous actors can really make or break a film, as they will make a film more popular and it will make more money. So, to a certain extent, it may be right that they get well paid for the work they do. However, if you compare what top actors earn with the salaries of key worker jobs like teachers or doctors, jobs that need a high level of expertise, then I do think it's unfair that top actors are paid so much. What do you think, Marcus?
I agree with you. In fact, I think most people would share your opinion. But it may also be a question of how little some key workers earn, not just the fact that top actors earn so much. I like the idea that salaries across the board should be more equal, so that the minimum and maximum pay doesn't have such extreme differences.
Good point. I mean, it's crazy that someone pretending to be a doctor in a film earns more than an actual doctor who is saving people's lives.
Is it best to only go to the cinema in order to watch big-budget films, or should you give indie films a chance too? Why? Why not?
That's not something I've ever given a lot of thought to. Let me see. Well, the cinema is definitely the best place to see big-budget action films. The sound and the big screen is just amazing. I would much prefer to watch them there than on TV, for example. The cinema is expensive, though, so I don't really go very often. I can't afford it. So I would prefer to save my money to see blockbuster films at the cinema, not independent films, which I can watch on TV later.
Perhaps to some extent. But not everyone likes those kind of big-budget Hollywood films. Personally, I prefer a lot of indie films. They deserve watching too. I saw a fantastic small-budget Mexican film at my local cinema, for example. I would prefer to see that than some of the big-budget films on offer at the moment.
To what extent does having a big budget result in a good film?
I don't think that with this kind of question you can really give a definite answer. First of all, I think it depends on your definition of good. As I said before, not everyone likes the same kind of films. What one person thinks is a good film, someone else may not enjoy. I quite often find that I'm drawn towards low-budget independent films. Having a great storyline, a good script and excellent actors are essential. A big budget may make things easier, but it doesn't automatically result in a good film. Do you agree?
Yes, totally. And I think many people share your interest in low-budget films. Just to add that big-budget films that do really well first time round often have several sequels, which often aren't as good as the first, even if they have the same high budget or an even bigger one. For that reason, I think that whilst the budget may make a difference to some features of a film, like special effects and cinematography, this doesn't automatically result in a better film.
Thanks. That's the end of the test.
Unit 9. Check it. Vocabulary 1. Viewing habits.
Binge watch. Drop. Dubbed. Episodes. Installment. On air. Live streaming. Medium. Reboot. Rerun. Subtitles. Tune in.
Unit 9. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Phrasal verbs. The film industry.
Blend in. Break into. Brush up on. Call for. Cater for. Come across. Come under. Put forward. Put on. Run through. Sign up. Stand out. Turn into.
Unit 10. Reading. Role models for the future. A.
In 2020, Spanish singer-songwriter Rosalía Vila-Tobella won a Grammy Award for her second album, El Mal Querer, translated as Toxic Love. Her fusion of flamenco with urban styles, including pop, hip-hop and trap, showcased something refreshingly different in the music industry, gaining her not only an adoring international fan base, but also collaborations with established recording artists such as Billie Eilish, who she won an MTV award with in 2021 for Lo Vas a Olvidar, You'll Forget It. Composing, writing, arranging and producing all of her own songs are some of the ways that Rosalía hasn't stopped innovating. Another point of difference from some of her contemporaries is that the message of female empowerment in her song lyrics helps to inspire women to take control of their lives and to seek healthy, non-toxic relationships. This is reinforced by the fact that she works with a women-led team, something that is rare in the male-dominated music world. She is also breaking down language barriers by recording almost all her songs in her native Spanish and Catalan. Although Rosalía's powerful music is now played around the world, her beginnings were much humbler, starting from scratch and singing without a mic in weddings and restaurants. But she has retained both a hard-edged reality and a floral element in her video clips and imagery, which reminds her of the industrialised town in the countryside where she grew up.
B.
With over 30 world and Olympic medals, gymnastics superstar Simone Biles is the most decorated US female gymnast ever. Although she is accustomed to breaking records, Simone made headlines for a different reason, following her decision to withdraw from several event finals in the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. After winning 4 gold medals and a bronze in the Rio Games, Simone had been expected to bag several more medals in Tokyo. Her shock announcement came after she had difficulty performing a vault, usually one of her best events. She explained that she had suffered a mental block, temporarily losing her sense of where she was while in the air, something that can cause a gymnast to lose their sense of spatial awareness, making the manoeuvre extremely dangerous. In a statement, Simone explained that she was pulling out because she needed to stop to protect her physical and mental well-being. Although some labelled her a failure, surprisingly, Simone was widely praised for her openness. However, when it was then announced that Simone was to take part in the beam event, in which she went on to win a bronze medal, the true extent of her bravery became apparent. By highlighting the pressures that athletes face, promoting safe and healthy training conditions for sportsmen and women, and shining a light on the topic of mental health, Simone Biles has, arguably, achieved more than winning medals, providing a lesson in leadership and courage that shows why she is a role model for so many.
C.
One inspirational figure, acknowledged for his remarkable humanitarian work, is Ugandan Brian Gita. As Gita explains in a recent TEDx talk, although malaria is treatable, many deaths still occur because obtaining a fast diagnosis is easy to say, but hard to get. In many countries, clinics do not have sufficient numbers of specialist staff, nor the equipment necessary, to carry out detailed analysis of blood samples on large numbers of patients in a timely manner. It may involve waiting in long queues, and a full microscopic analysis is not a quick process. Brian felt there must be a more effective way to carry out the diagnosis, and applied his software engineering training to streamline the process, and started experimenting with various prototypes to design an invention that uses light and magnetism to test for malaria, and would not require a specialist to operate. It would be a mistake to assume this was straightforward, however. Finding a working solution took Gita back to the drawing board several times. But Brian refused to give up, and finally managed to build a device that could quickly and inexpensively provide an accurate diagnosis for malaria. Brian went on to win a prize for his invention, and trials in hospitals are already proving that the device may be a game changer when it comes to saving lives.
D.
American musician and activist Chutescat Martinez, sometimes known as X, is a powerful voice in the campaign for climate action who, inspired by his mother, Tamara Roska, began campaigning at the age of 6. At 15, he addressed world leaders at the United Nations in English, Spanish, and his native language, Nahuatl. Since becoming the global youth director of the organisation Earth Guardians, he regularly speaks at rallies and university campuses across the US and shares his experiences on social media. As a hip-hop artist, he uses rap, music, and storytelling to get his message across, including joining forces with Jaden Smith to record a song about the power of music to promote action against climate change. As well as using his music to highlight environmental issues and inspire young people to take part in environmental activism, Chutescat has directly campaigned against key figures who, he feels, have fallen short in tackling climate change. He and other young environmentalists even use the justice system to try to change legislation that they believe threatens sound environmental policies. His work was recognised when he won a Generation Change Award at the MTV Europe Music Awards and appeared as a panellist at the Inspiring and Defining Everyday Activism event. Undoubtedly a name to remember, Chutescat's drive and self-belief make him a substantial figure in a cause worth fighting for.
Unit 10. Listening. Exercise 3.
Welcome to this episode of Avid Readers, a podcast for book lovers everywhere. I'm Jo Bilston, and this week I'm talking about heroes in literature. The hero is an enduring archetype in culture, from Achilles in Homer's Iliad, one of the oldest works of literature, to Harry Potter and Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games. Understandably, the definition of what is considered heroic has changed according to societal norms. The heroes I have just mentioned span almost 3,000 years after all. In more modern times, many writers have preferred to focus on human heroes rather than superheroes with special powers. However, most heroes through the ages share certain characteristics. So, what is a hero? What are his or her qualities? Is it important that we even like a hero? Generally speaking, a hero is often the central character of a story. The plot develops around them and their experiences. Many stories featuring heroes are about a journey or quest, whether this is an actual journey to a place or a life journey towards knowledge, understanding, or self-acceptance. Heroes are usually the main protagonist, the leading character of a story, because telling the story in this way is a way of seeing it through their eyes. But this isn't always the case. The main protagonist of a story doesn't have to be a hero. So, what are the qualities of a hero? Well, he or she is usually someone the reader can admire, with some possessing, as I mentioned before, superhero powers, such as the heroes in Greek and Roman literature, or in Norse literature like Thor. This kind of hero is what we can call a willing hero. They are adventurous and courageous, running towards danger, not away from it. Other examples of this are James Bond, Luke Skywalker, and Moana. Although these heroes are far from perfect, they have many positive qualities, such as strength of character, loyalty, and bravery. Another type of hero is the unwilling hero, like Katniss Everdeen or Frodo Baggins from The Lord of the Rings. Not wanting to be heroes, these characters are initially reluctant to put themselves in danger, but eventually come to realize that everyone is counting on them and find courage within themselves to take on the challenges they face. These heroes are much more relatable and more realistic than the willing hero, who often presents an idealized set of characteristics. Other heroes, however, may have much more subtle or ambiguous qualities. Take, for example, the title character of Jane in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, whose journey from childhood to adulthood we follow in the novel. Having experienced hardship as a girl, Jane is awkward, unattractive, and poor, yet she has great strength and is noble and kind. These kinds of heroes are arguably much more interesting because they are the most like us, the reader. So, does a hero have to be likable? I would argue that they don't, and will explain why. First, for a reader to really feel engaged in a story, they need to empathize with the hero, but they don't necessarily need to like them. Take, for example, the character of Severus Snape from the Harry Potter novels. Having been bullied by Harry's father, Snape is portrayed as a bitter, spiteful character who is consistently mean to Harry and his friends. It is only when Harry becomes older and wiser that he and the reader understand how brave and selfless Snape really was. A true hero, and I would claim as much of a hero as Harry himself is. And that brings me on to my next point. Some of the best and most memorable heroes in literature have flaws. By that I mean some defect of character that means they make mistakes. As I mentioned before, the far from perfect hero is much more interesting and relatable than a hero with no faults. And many of literature's most fascinating characters are examples of a tragic hero. A person who, because of a bad decision or act, causes his or her own downfall. These character stories are often the ones that touch us the most. Although the defining characteristics of heroes have changed through time and can vary hugely, one thing that most share is the fact that they lived courageously and created, through their own actions, a memorable moment that helps us understand what it is to be human.
Unit 10. Developing Speaking. Exercises 3 and 4.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this debate. My name's Gina, and together with Chris, we make the affirmative team. On the affirmative team, we believe that there should be teenagers in government. Before we proceed, I will define what we mean by in government. Of course, for many politicians, their political career is their full-time job, and this would not be realistic for a teenager who needs time to complete their education. But we strongly believe that some teenagers should participate in government on a part-time basis. Firstly, it's clear to us that our elected politicians make decisions that affect everyone in the country, people of all ages and from all walks of life. We propose that in order to make decisions that affect teenagers, politicians need to understand teenagers. Many politicians may not be able to identify with the challenges that teenagers face today, and we believe that if teenagers were able to consult on government policies, they would be able to help inform decisions on issues that affect teenagers now and in the future, such as education, health, and the environment. We also believe that many teenagers today are highly engaged with issues such as climate change, partly due to the fact that we have many years ahead of us and want to look after our planet. A case in point is the climate activism started by Greta Thunberg and other young people. We propose that older politicians could benefit from our enthusiasm for these causes. And finally, we feel that teenagers would be uniquely able to engage other teenagers and get young people interested in politics. Many teenagers are very comfortable with social media and the internet and would be able to use their skills to start digital campaigns and share valuable information with the public. We believe that a lot of young people today don't feel engaged with politics and feel that it is something that doesn't involve them or concern them. We propose that if teenagers were part of the government, they would be able to connect with other young people and help them to see the value in engaging with social issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the opposition team, we take issue with the proposition that teenagers could be in government. Being in any decision-making job comes with a great deal of responsibility, and our governments have to make many important and difficult decisions. We feel that to make such decisions, it is important that anyone in government has completed their education, so they can make intelligent and informed decisions and use critical thinking skills that they will have developed during their education. The speaker on the affirmative team argues that being young would be an advantage in government because teenagers may have more years of life ahead of them and are therefore more engaged with issues which affect our future, such as climate change. But we believe there is no evidence for the affirmative team's assertion. On the contrary, we assert that adults have more life experience and will have had more time to learn about important issues facing our planet and our society, and so may be more engaged with these issues. And in addition, more life experience means they may understand these issues better. We do accept the affirmative team's proposition that it is important that our politicians understand the issues that affect teenagers, but we do not think it is realistic for teenagers to have a position in government. Firstly, because there are enough pressures on teenagers already, with school, exams, social life and extracurricular activities. It is unlikely that many teenagers would have time to work in government. Secondly, because we feel that the job of being in government comes with too much responsibility, and it wouldn't be fair to burden teenagers with this. And finally, as we mentioned previously, we think it is important that people in government have had a chance to gain life experience and complete their education. And we feel it would be unfair to put teenagers in this difficult role at this stage in life.
Thank you, opposition team. We accept the speaker's claim that it is important to have life experience before taking on a role in government. But we feel there is no evidence for the claim that young people may be less engaged with certain issues because they haven't had enough time to learn about it. On the contrary...
Unit 10. Check it. Vocabulary 1. People who make a difference.
Forerunner. Humanitarian. Iconoclast. Mentor. Philanthropist. Pioneer. Role model. Trailblazer.
Unit 10. Check it. Vocabulary 2. Words with prepositions.
Abstain from. Attitude towards. Capacity as. Comparison between. Concentrate on. Gifted in. Intention of. Object to. Praise for. Satisfied with. Sensitive about. Sensitive to. Suspicious of.
Unit 10. Check it. Vocabulary 3. Skills and qualities.
Flexibility. Networking skills. Optimism. Persistence. Resilience. The ability to motivate others. The ability to see the big picture. The ability to think outside the box.